So you're welcome once again to this part of our video for this week 8. In our earlier video we learned how to style a React component using Tailwind. So now we are going to shift gears to moving to learning some React way of doing things, and that is React route. So we are going to learn how to use React navigation. So how do we do something like a navbar and make it work the React way, not the normal HTML way? So excuse me, sorry, we can feel the effect of React working as a single page application, SPA. So we are going to learn the following in this slide. We're going to learn how to install the React route add-on. We are going to learn how to set it up, defining our routes, using the route, using route params, and redirecting to a route without the link tag. So let's get started. So we need to install a package. So if you go to your browser, and the name of the package is actually React route add-on. So you type npm, in case you don't know how to install it, npm React route add-on. So if you do that, because you have that word npm before, it is going to lead you to this page. So just to type npm, and you can copy this line of code. So what if you don't remember that it is React route add-on? You can still use Google. Say how to add routing in React. So if you hit enter, you're going to come to this W3 School React router. So once you go there, it's definitely going to refer you to what? Installing React router done. So anyway you want it will lead you to this installation. So let me go back to our terminal. So I'm going to use my VS Code terminal. So go to my terminal, new terminal. So just a moment, it's going to load. So I'm going to right click, paste, then I'll hit enter. So while it's installing, let's just build a nav component. So before we do that, let us clear our app.js. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment it out. I'm going to remove all of this. So it's clean now. Then this, our default function, we're going to remove that, so everything looks neat. So by the way, our package has finished installing. So if I save now, notice that our React application would be clean, so there is nothing there. Nice. So let us create our nav component. So we are going to create two components. Now we've not started doing the routing, we're just laying the foundation to do the routing. So need to create 2 extra components, so which I will call my nav. So this is the nav folder. Inside the nav folder I will have my nav.jsx. then don't forget your RAFCE. So I click enter. So do we have a footer component? No. So I'm going to create a footer. Then I'm going to create the footer component now. Footer.jsx. So hit enter. Then RAFCE. Nice. So what do we do now? We'll come to our app.jss. we're going to import both of them. So I have my nav. Remember, you tap this one from your component, so it will automatically import space / this. Next, I'll give some space, and you see why I'm giving that space. Footer. So you choose the one from your footer component. So slash. So if I save this and go to my browser, I'm going to see my my nav and my footer. Nice. So when we want to do a navigation, how do we do that using React? So let's go back to our nav component so we can flesh out our nav component. So I think we are done with this. I'm going to close the terminal, then go to my nav component here. So we'll install Tailwind, so we use Tailwind for our CSS. So instead of using this div of nav, so I'm going to use the nav tab because it has more semantic meaning. Then I'm going to use OL, so order list. Then inside it I'm going to have li, so let's simple logo. Then in your li I have some anchor tags, so I'll have link, so I'll have maybe slash home. So that is what this would be like. So the logo, so I can wrap the logo with my anchor tag slash home. Then this will be the logo. So if this is an image, you can also wrap the image in an anchor tag. That will also work. So since we already have our home here, we can have this as my. So let's see the components that we have so that I don't repeat them. So I have my about, I have my books, I have my home component, so that will go here. So I have my about, then I have my books. So let's use those three. So I have books, so here I'm going to put my books. So shift alt arrow down, so this will going to be my let's look at I think so we use so we have books, we have let's use basics, then we have about, so basics, then about. So you can have as many as you want, but this is just bare minimum. So this is normally how we will style a nav tag, like navigation tag. So let's flesh this out using Tailwind, and we can start see how we can. Then after that, we'll see how we can start implementing the package we installed, which is the React Router DOM. So I'm going to give this a class name, of just a class attribute. Then it should have a background color of black. Then it should have a padding as py of 3, so px as horizontal of 4. So let's see how that looks like. Then you can, so this is how it looks like. So you notice I'm not seeing the text, so what I need to do is to highlight all of this. So I'll put my cursor here, I'll hold my Alt key, tap here, tap here, tap here, add a class name. So text should be white. So if I do that, I'm going to see that my text styling is white. Next, we need to flex this, so let's flex that. So what I'm going to do is, remember this, the list item has an immediate parent of OL and not nav. So if you put your flex here, it's not going to flex correctly, so I'm going to put it here. So class name, so flex, then items center, then justify center. No, okay, justify should be between. So if I do that, I will have something like this. Nice. So you see I have my logo, I have this. So let's also flex this too. So just what I will do to save time is to copy this, Ctrl C. Now remember this second li here holds that, so I'm going to put my class, paste that, and change this to, even if I put it as between, to still have no much effect unless I put gap. So gap of 4, that is 16 pixel. So if I do that, I'm going to have this. So I have my books, basics, about. So now if I click on any of this, so let's click the first one, you notice it refreshes the React application and nothing happens. So this is when we'll start learning how to add or use our React routing. So the first step which we have done is to download the package, if you recall. So if I bring up my terminal again, so just drag this up. Remember, this is the first step, which is you install your npm React Router DOM. So that is the first step. So now the second step is we go to our main.js. So that is our main.js. So what I'm going to do is come here. So I'm going to leave a comment. So router step 2. So the router step 2 is this. So you use your browser router from React Router DOM. So it's not a self-closing tag, so the step is just wrap this around the app. So let me move this. Why is it? Okay, so I'll move that. So I'll move, so it should be like this. So I'm going to move, wrap my app component around my browser router. So this is the first step. So you can format the document by using this format. So configure, that should be my prettier, and that goes that way. So of course you save. So this is the step 2. Remember, the step 1 is to what? Download. So let me do Ctrl Z. So this step 1, let me put that here. Router step 1 has to do with npm install React Router DOM. So that should be done on your terminal. Then step 2 is to wrap all of this around here. So save that. Then this step 3 is you go to your app component, which is not far from here. So now anything that you want to be showing between your pages, so you want it to be constant, maybe above or on top, you put it above the route. So that's why I gave that space earlier. So I'm going to make that comment again. Router step 3. So the router step 3 is this. Use a component called routes plural from React Router DOM. So this is not a self-closing tag. Then inside it you have route singular route. So this is a self-closing tag, space. Then the next thing now is this route paths that we have defined here. So we have /home, we have books, we have basic, we have about. Will not make it valid in our application. So I'll put path, then I'll have slash. So when a user hits that, so which component will it load? So we have element. So I'll have my home, so which you have already imported, remember. So if I go to the top, we have our home already imported, so we can use that. So now we can make our job easier. Shift Alt arrow down, then I can have my books. So here I will use my books. Then I can have my basics. So here should be my basics. Then I can have my about. So here will be my what? About. So just to be sure the spelling is correct. So basics. Okay, that was plural. So now this is router step 2. I mean step 3. So if I save this, I go back to my browser. So you notice I'm already seeing some components here. So if I tap on this, so you see it refresh and it just shows me the home page. Now if I click on books, see it refreshes, it shows me books. I click on basics, it refreshes, it shows me this. I click on about, it refreshes, it shows me this. Now this is not the React way of doing routing. Remember, React is used to build a single page application, so it doesn't have to refresh to give you a new page or a new component. So the error we made was to use the anchor tag. So for the router step 4 is this. So let me now use this one, shift alt A. So the router step 4 has 2 sub steps. So router step 4 has to do with this. The first one is replace all anchor tag with link tag. Then step 2 is replace href with 2. So that is just these 2 steps. And once we do this, we'll now be using the we'll now give React full access to our routing system. So even though we've done step 1 to step 3, this step 4 is what seals it up, is what seals the deal. So let's do that. So I'll come here, so I'll tap here, hold my Alt, then put my cursor in all these places. So if you can't follow me like this, just do it manually, but you should do it exactly as I'm doing it. So I'll backspace, type link. Now this link comes from React Router DOM. So I'm going to tap that, so it has imported. Now we are using this link just to give React, or make React in charge of our routing system. But remember, when you save, and this has to be compiled to the way your browser will understand it, this link is the same thing as our anchor tag. So if you're using CSS or SAS to style, don't put link tag, still put the anchor tag, but you're using the link tag here just to make it function the way React should function. So the next thing, I'll change all this href to 2. So I'm going to select all of them like this. So you can select them like this. So what you just do is you first double tap the first one, hold your Alt, and double tap the next one. So if you don't want to do that double tapping, you first of all select the first one, you do your Ctrl D. So Ctrl D, Ctrl D, Ctrl D. Now if you do the next one, it will come to this one. So I'll just type 2. So that is it. So now we have completed our routing system. So if I go back to my application, nice, notice if I tap my home, notice this does not refresh. Books, notice it does not refresh. Basics, about. So you see how we are doing things the React way. So this is the routing system. So the next thing I want to show you on my slide is using the wraparounds. But before I do that, let us handle error. So let's say somebody mistakenly type, maybe want to manually type our URL, and the person instead of about put about. So let's see what will happen. So you see, it just brings out an empty page. Now this footer is showing because we put that outside our routing system. So remember, anything that you want to be showing between your pages should be put above or below the route. So if I move this nav down and take this one up, you see that the nav bar is showing at the bottom, while this will be showing at the top. So now to the user, this looks like an error. So we want to tell the person that this is an error from him, not from our web page, because the person might be expecting that React is trying to get the page up under the hood. So let's handle that. So what I'll do is to create another component called error. So folder first, error. So hit enter. Then the next thing you want to do is create your error component .jsx. Then you do your ROAFCE, hit enter. So the next thing is to come to our routing, our app.jss. I'll do shift alt arrow down. Now remember that in CSS, to select all the tags, let's say I want to give all the tags in a border or a particular style, I'll use the universal selector. Or let's say I want to reset my page, I'll use what universal selector. Do some basic settings, remove the padding, remove the margin, box size and border box. So it's also the same thing with the routing system. So you use asterisk to signify all routes. So shift this. I don't know why it's not coming up. Asterisk, shift this. Okay. Then next I'm going to add my error component. So error. So don't forget to always select the one from the component, because there might be some default components that you don't know how to use for now. So just always be careful. It's not always the first one that is correct. So that has automatically imported. So if I save this now, it's going to show something like this. So error. So now the person knows that it's an error. So let's tie this a little bit. So what we want to do is go to the error component, then so I'm going to put a h2 and put some, so oops, entered route not found. Then you can have a button here, button, go back. So if I do this, the person will know that, okay, yes, this is an error. So oops, you entered route not what found. So let's make this eye-catching. So remember, it's a warning, so the color should be different. So a class of, so put the text should be of red 500, then text should be center. So let's see how this looks like. So this has a text of center. So we can give this a custom height, so height of 80 view height. So that is not how we do it. So put it inside angle bracket, not square bracket, rather 80 VH. So if I do that, we'll have something like this, but I want it to be at the center. So what we're going to do now is, so this text center becomes useless. So what we are going to do now is to use flex. So flex items should be center. So the flex type should be column, and justify should be center. So if I do that, I'm going to have something like this. So you see, it makes sense. So I don't want the text to be applied to the button. So I'm going to do that. So class, I paste that. So if I do that, we'll have something like this. So go back. Okay, so when the user clicks back, what happens? So that is what I want to show you now. So let us programmatically, normally we can use a link tag from here, but remember what I want to show you is directing to a route without the link tag. So that is, you do that programmatically. So I'm going to, so the first step is you create a, you use the use navigate. So let's redirect. So this is how I normally use it, because if it's the full direct, it seems to be like a keyword in React. So just that's how I use it. So use navigate, so not navigation, use navigate. Then remember how to add an event listener. So that is the step 2. So on click, so I'll use my anonymous function. Then this redirect is a method. So inside here I'll put a valid route. So I'll just put home. So if I do that, when the user clicks here, the person goes to the home page. So you see, so if I type an invalid route here, let's say Chile, which is an invalid route, so it attempt to do that, so to show me this. So this can be an image depending on the design of your web page, but this is how it looks like. So once the person goes back, so the person enters here, so the person can. So this helps the user to know that your site does not have an error, is the typing error, if the person does not visit your home page first. Maybe the person feels that the URL is short and decide to type that. So the next thing I want to show you is about the route params. So how do we do that route params? So I'll show you a simple example. So let's say this is a book. So let's say in this our, let's assume that in this our books we have some list of books, and if I want to read that books, I'll just click one and that will take me to the book and that's how reading it. But for now we have not done React listing, so I will not do that. So what I will just do it from here. So in our subsequent classes you'll see how we'll do that. So how do I do that? So the first step is I'll come here, Shift Alt arrow down. So before I do that, I want to create a details page, so that anytime I create a dynamic route, it will, or the user clicks a dynamic route, it will take that person to the details page. Now if you have more than one details page, you can change the name. So the name of the component does not matter, but it's always good to give it a name that suits what you're doing, so it will be easier for you and others to understand. So I'm just going to name it details. So after that, details.jsx. Then of course I will do my arrow AFCE. So I'll save. So I have my component ready. So the next thing is this. I will now put my maybe books / column ID. Now what this means is that when I want to access the route, I'm going to access this like this. So like this, /books / maybe 1, 2, 3, just like so. So anytime my React sees a pattern like this, it knows that this is a valid routing system. So this is dynamic. So this ID here this column ID tells React that this is a dynamic route, so it's not expecting the user to type exactly 1, so this other value here can change. So that is the reason for the column. Then this ID will be like the variable that I can use to, like the variable that I can use to get this last part of the route if I want it, which is the params. So you can use ID here, you can use slug, you can use chile, you can use whatever stuff you want to use, but whatever you use here will determine what you use to get this one here. So I don't know if that makes sense. So if I use chile here, I'll use chile to get this one. Now you can have in your application, you can have various dynamic routes. So if you use ID here, you should not use ID in your next dynamic route. Maybe you can use slug, you can use ID1, you can use ID2, just like that, but it shouldn't be ID if your dynamic route is more than one. So now that we have that, so we need our details page, not about details. So if I do that, notice it's coming from a component, so I do that. So next, what I want to do now is, if I go to my browser, so let's say I click on books/1, so that will refresh and get to my details page. So if I change this to chile, so as long as it follows that pattern of book/, it's going to load what? The details page. Now the next part is how do I get this? Now this can be the book ID, and I want to use to get that particular book to display to the user when he clicks on the book heading. So let us do that. So go to our details page. The first step is we select, then we are going to the structure ID. Now again, we are using ID because that is what we used here. So if I use slug here, I'm going to use slug here. If I use chile here, I'm going to use chile here. So I'm using ID here. Now use params. So notice that it's coming from React.DOM. Then I'll save that. So I'll just make a sentence out of this. Control X. Then H2. So I will say books details. So let me paste that. So I can put a column here. Enter my JavaScript environment and put ID. So if I save this now, we're going to see this. So books detail for what? Chile. So if I put that as 1, enter. So you're seeing books detail for what? 1. So whatever I put here works. So this is the dynamic routing. So that is how we do the routing system in our React. Now just to remind you, you should never put your error route above any other valid route. You should put it as a last, so that if any of this does not match, then it knows it's an error. Now notice what happens if I move this up. So I've moved my error route above my books route. So let's see what happens. So the route that was valid before will automatically become an error. So let's say I type about. Notice, of course, that is an error. But what if I type books/1? So you notice it's still okay. That does not work. So let's see. So that didn't. So that means the arrangement work. Okay. So as at the time I tried this last, this will show an error, that is, it will be caught by this. So maybe using React with Vite has done some nice background work. So this is the first time I'm trying it. So that works. So let's try it again. So let me use Chile just to be sure. So using this React with Fight has done much work. So but is a it has been my habit to use this format. So but from what you have seen now, the order of the route does not matter, even though it is a universal route. So that is one of the advantages of using React with Fight. So this error has been eliminated. Okay, so we move to the next part of the video, which is React hooks. So what are hooks? So hooks allows function component to have access to state and other React features. Because of this, class components are generally no longer needed. So there are 3 rules for hooks. Hooks can only be called inside React function component. Hooks can only be called at the top level of a component. Hooks cannot be conditional. So hook scope. So we have local and global. So they are just like the variable scope. So some common local hooks. So we have the use state, use ref, use effect. Then the global hook. So we have the atom and the coil. Then we have our custom hook. So these are reusable functions, so which we can use to make our code logic. So when we have a custom hook, so when you have a component logic that needs to be used by multiple components, we can extract that logic to a custom hook. So a custom hook is like a component but must use before the component name. Example, use fetch, use addition. So these are what we are going to learn in this slide. So the first thing I want you to keep in mind is these 3 rules of hooks. So hooks can only be called inside React function components. So if you're using class-based components, hooks will not work there. Hooks can only be called at the top level of the component. So immediately after the function declaration. So what it means is this. So immediately after the function declaration, call all your hooks before you start writing any logic here. So you don't call it at the bottom and just disorganize it. So it wants you to call all of them at the top level first. So just the way your imports are always at the top before your function, so that is how your hooks should be called. So that's for that. Then hooks cannot be what? Conditional. You cannot say if something is true, then you call your hooks, else you don't call. So what it means that when you are writing your hooks here, don't use any condition before it will be declared or not. Okay, so now we know that the first type of hook we want to learn is the use state. This is part of the local hook. So let's do that. So before we do that, let me write the template of the structure of a hook. So shift port A, something else is on shift port A. So the structure of a hook component is, I would say, let, or you can use const. Let me say, let's use count, then comma set count, then equal to use state, then I can put 0. So let me explain this. So this is a function and it returns 2 variables for you when you are using this function. The first one is count, which is a variable that will is equal to 0, the set count means that whenever you want to change count from 0 to 1 or to 100, you use this function. So let me do that. So count is a variable whose initial value is what? 0. So whatever value you put here, if it's an object, if it's a class, if it's a string, so whatever I put here will be the initial value of this. Then set count is a function. Let's say that use state gives you to update count when you want. Now this is like buying a car and they give you the car key. So each time you want to lock the car, you can lock the car. Each time you want to drive the car, you can drive the car. So that is what this set count looks like. Then of course I've explained 0 is the initial value of count. So that is how it looks like. So this use state is a hook. Now what will it be like without using a use state? So let's write a simple function. So let's say I have a variable. Let's say let c should be equal to 0, and now I want each time I create a button. So let's move this to a component. So let's move this as a component, or let's see the page that is less free. So let's move this to the home component because that is less free. Ctrl X, so that will keep this guy neat. I save, so I go to my home component, so I can move that here. So you can use your hook in any component. So let's say I have this as C and I want, if I click something, so I'll just put H2, I'll just put my count or C, then put colon C, then I put a button here. So button increase just a C plus. So that means each time I click this button, C will just increment. So let me go to my home. So each time I click on this button, C will just increment. So what I can do is to add a border using Tailwind. So I have a class name, then border, so border, so if I do that, let's see what we have. So we have something like this. So it's a little bit showing like a border. So I can have my P of 3. So let's use 2 pixels. So we'll have something that looks like this. So this is not a design course, so at least it's showing that this is a button. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do now is, if I click this, let it increment. So what I can do now is write a function increase C, so I'll now put C is equal to C plus 1. So this will increment C so that I should be seeing C on my DOM. So just to be sure, so let's try this, if this will work. So if I click this, notice C is not incrementing. So let's go to our inspect mode. So in my inspect mode, I'll go to the console. So notice I click, nothing happens. So let's, just to be sure that this is working. Okay, we've not actually called it here, so let's do that. So on click, remember I can just put my increase C here. So if I do that, let me see if it still work. So you see nothing is working. So just to be sure that is working, I'll put a console.log C here. So if I do that, you notice if I do that, I get the increment on my console, but React is preventing it from actually updating the DOM because it's not a hook. So one of the React hook is that for you to have access to the DOM, to change something dynamically after it has been rendered to the DOM, you must use what hooks. So you notice the initial C was showing because that is normal, but after it shows, when you want to change it dynamically, you must use what, a hook. So instead of using our C now, let us use our count. So what I'm going to do is to change all this C to my count. So I'll declare a variable. So instead of this C, so instead of doing this now, I can use this principle of C set what C, so it must not be count, then use state. So remember I have to import that, then I'll put what, 0. Then instead of this method of changing C, what I can do, so I'll comment it out. So what I can do, I can use set C. Remember that set C is a function that used to gives you to update C when you want. So I can use the previous like this, and I use previous plus 1. So this is also equivalent to this. So the previous here is 0, so the previous plus 1. So this previous is not like it's a keyword. You can use A here, but if you use A here, so it means A plus 1. So if I do that, notice what will happen now. So if I click here, notice it updates on the DOM. So you need notice, and notice it updates without me having to what, refresh the page. Nice. So just like we can move from one page to another without refreshing, so we can change a state. So that is why it is called a hook. So I can remove my console. So thank you for your service, and if I save now, we have that. So I can clear this and notice I have that. Nice. So this is hook. So the principle can be extended. So instead of just count, so I can have the decrease count. So I put this, can have minus, so I can have the decrease count. So instead of increase C, I'll put decrease C. So what I'll just do is to copy this function, shift alt arrow down, change here to decrease C. Then instead of plus now, I'll just put minus. So that is how simple it is. So that means I'll have something like this. So let's say this is a football match. So if I refresh, so this is a football match between maybe Nigeria and Ghana, and Nigeria just scored goals, so it's incremented by 1. But AVR now investigated and saw that maybe that was an offside, so it decrements. Let's see. So that is it. So that is a simple logic for that. So this is reacting. So let me give you one other example. So let's say I have a name, so I can have a name here. So I can have name. So it's just a convention that if you have a variable of name, you use what? Set name. So that gives you an idea that this set name can be used to what? Update update the name variable. So I'll use Amade Chile. So what I want is, if I click on this, so I'll put update name. So update name. So what I'm going to put here can be a pipe symbol. So instead of C, I can put pipe symbol name, then name. So instead of this, I'll use my anonymous function. Then since it's just the name I want to send, so set name. So I'll put John Doe. So if I do this, notice I'll have C is what? Is 0, name is Amarichile. So I can click this, I can click this. But immediately I click on this update name, it will change it to what? John Doe. And each time I click it again, because there is no change of state, you see it remains what? John Doe. But this one, because it changes, it becomes like this. Okay, so that is the principle of using a use state. Now the value of a use state, as you have seen, can be a number, it can be a string, it can be a boolean, it can be an array, it can be an object. So the principle can be extended, but just know that it is only number or string. So that is it for the use state. So the next one is the use ref. Now when should you use a use ref and when should you use a use state? So let's use both of them and see the difference. So let's say I want to have so let's say I have another one. So let the previous C should be equal to what? Should be equal to use ref then by default this should be 0, right? So this use ref, now I can use this here. So let me also add a pipe symbol of this. So the previous C should be colon bracket, so prev C current. So this is how the useref works. So whatever value you put here, to get that value back, you must use this dot current, because it saves this as an object. So if I save this now, you will not see any visible difference. So you just see 0 and 0. But you notice what happens. So each time I update C, I can come here and I put set. I put my previous C dot current is equal to C. Now of course I will do this before I update my state, so that this is what should be done. So what I will do is to duplicate this, then come back, Alt arrow down, so I move that. So you notice what will happen now is this: if I press plus, you notice this my previous C is still what? Is still 0, but if I increase again, you see it changed to what? 1. If I decrement, it changes to what? 2. I decrement, it changes to 1. So it just track the previous state. Now somebody might say, why can't I just use my previous C instead of using my what? My use state. Now that is the difference. If you use your use state, it triggers a re-rendering. So I'll show you what that means. So let's have our, how do I show you that now? So I'm going to show you that using the use effect. So but one thing I want to show you is this. So let's say in this hour count, let me, instead of setting this, so let me assume I want to use the C plus 1. So that should be an increment, right? So oh sorry, excuse me. So if I press my C here, you notice I don't get an update, but if I do a console.log of the previous count.current, I'll see the difference. So you see now, plus, see, so it does not cause a re-rendering of the page, but whereas a state causes a re-render of the page. So if you want to change a state without causing a re-rendering, you use what? You use your what? Your user. Then each time there is a render of the page, then it will now output that what it now should have output. So but if each time you use your use card, this time I click this, it's like, I don't want to use the word, it's like it refreshes the page. But remember, what we mean by refresh is when we tap here. So but it renders means that it tries to compare what was the new change and it changes that. But using the useref does not do that. So in order for us to understand the difference more, we'll now check how we'll use the use effect. Just a moment, let me plug my system. Okay, sorry for that. So we've now learned the this use ref, so I can now show you the slight difference between them. So let's learn the use one. The next one is what the use ref. So the use ref is used for two purposes. Number one, to fetch the data when the page is initially loaded, and to refresh that data when a state changes. So let's say if my page loads, or each time we enter this page the first time, I want to trigger an alert and say welcome to this page. So what I'm going to do there is to use a use effect. So you can have more than use effect, just as you can have more than one state. So it's like the set timeout and the set interval. So if I put alert and say welcome, and I save that. So let me go to my output. So you see it's showing me welcome. I save, but you see it occurs more than once. So each time I click count or anything that causes a re-rendering, you will notice it does that. So instead of using this alert, let me use a console.log. So console.count so I've forgotten the shortcut for that. Console.count CLO console.count. So I put rendered so I just put this. So let's, to be sure we have this. So it rendered just once. So if I click this 2 times, see the third time. So you see. So let's now, you notice that this user does not cause a this rendering. So each time I change a state, you notice that this effect runs. So what I can do is to activate this back. So let me, instead of this, so print as its previous count, then I'll activate this back. So if I do that, I press my plus, so you see that rendering. Nice. So what if I want the useref to run only in the first instance, the first time the page is loaded? Like I only want it to run when I refresh the page. So it renders twice because we have 1, 2. So if I do this, so what if I want it to only run when the page loads? So what I will do is to come here, add an empty array, empty square bracket like this. So if I do that, notice if I refresh, it runs twice as usual because it's outputting 2 states. So each time it outputs those states, it causes a render. So if I press on any of this now, you notice that this effect does not run. So you see, so you see how it works. So this one is actually tracking the previous state. Now what if I want it to run each time I click on update name? So what I'll just do here is to set the name here. So I put name here, name here, so notice if I click on any of this, you notice that the page does not get rendered. That is, this use effect does not run. But if I just press this like this once, you notice it runs for a 4th time, and each time I press that, now because there's no change in state, you see it does not run again. So that is how we use the use effect. So any dependency that you want, when the state changes, then you should run whatever is here, you pass as a dependency. So that is that. So the use ref can be used to track a previous state or to keep track of a data that you don't want to maybe output to the DOM at first, but if you must output to the DOM in real time, just use your use state. Then if you want to fetch a data when the page initially loads, so you can do that in your use effect. So it runs that on the background. Then when data is fetched, then you cannot output it to what? To the DOM. Then your use ref can also be used for other purposes, for like to add focus to an input and other stuff, but we've not learned forms, so I will not go deep into that. So just in summary, your use state, each time you change a state, it causes a re-rendering of the page. So let's say I add my previous count.current here as my dependency, so you can play around to understand the principle. So if I clear this console now, tap this, notice 0, 1. So each time the user undergoes a change, you see it causes a re-rendering. So because that has changed from one state to another. So that's just the principle there. So I can make this to be, so if I make this to be count, which is my C, That means each time I change it to just run. Let me do that. So you see, so it renders. Now one thing you should not do is to put a set state inside an use effect, because if you do that, once this one changes here, it will cause a render which will trigger another render. So before you know, you have an infinite output or loop that can crash your application. So never put a set state inside a use effect and add that same state as a dependency. So that will just trigger an infinite loop. So you shouldn't do that. So the next thing that I want to learn now is, let's see how many minutes we have used. 1 hour. Okay, so for 1 hour 30 minutes we should be done. So the next thing that I want to learn now is, so we learned about the local hooks. So that means whatever hook I'm using in my home now, I cannot transfer it to a next hook unless I use prop. So let's say I'm in my home component and I want what I'm doing to be available in my books. So you see that there's no how they match. So if I want that to be possible with ease, then that means this logic I have to do it in my app component. Then I'll pass it as a prop to my home and to my books. So you see, so that means for as many components that I want to share, I have to do that logic here. So before you know, the app component will be filled with different logics. So in order to prevent that, you can use the require atom, so that whatever hook you want to share between two different components that is not related like this, you can actually do that from your from your atom using the global stating. So we are moving from this now, because of course so excuse me, from our JavaScript, if you declare a variable within a function, it is local to that function, so I cannot share that. Sorry, excuse me. So that is why in order for this to work, I have to bring this outside here and pass them as a prop. So I don't want to do that because that will lead to what they call prop drilling. So you will be passing your components from top level to another, even when the component you're passing into does not actually need that. So I will not waste time on doing that. So but just from our knowledge of JavaScript, you know that I cannot put C on my on my boost component. If I do that, I will not have anything. It just show me undefined. So to do that, we need to install our atom. So atom comes as a package in recoil. So I'll put npm recoil. Sorry, excuse me. So if I do that, npm recoil, so I misspelled. So this is the recoil. So you can just copy that. Yes, I'll just copy it like this. Ctrl C. Then I'll go to my terminal again. So I've closed that. So drag this up. Right click, paste, hit enter. So while it's installing, let me clear my nose. So that has finished installing. So before you use Recoil, it has a first step, which is like the second step of using our route. So we have to go back to our main.jss. So excuse me, so I can close this now. Then I'm going to wrap the Recoil route. So this is the Recoil route around everything, so even including my browser router. So I'll just wrap them everything there. So I can right click and format this document using my prettier. So it's taking a while, I don't know why. Okay, so that has been formatted, so I'll save. So this is the first step. So if you don't do this, you can't have access to your global stating. So like this, I can have another comment and say Recoil. Let's just put atom, because that's atom step 2. Of course, step 1 is to download that. So now the step 2, if you like, I'll go to my components folder, create a folder called atoms. So this is where I'll save all my atoms. And this is not a component, so I'll just put. So the first I want to put is cat.jsx. So let's say I have a cat, and each time I click add cat in something or add books, something like that, it should show on my navbar or on any other component. It should update. So I will have my atom. So what I will just do is export cat, so const cat equal to output atom. So I'll use automatic import, hit enter, then I'll have my default value. I'll have my key first of all. So this key should be unique because you can have so many different atoms. So I'll just use cat, then default value, default should be 0, right? So this is how the cat item will look like. So how do I change this cat item? So let me go to, so let's say I want to change this from my home component. So what I'm going to do here is, let me close this so I'll have some room. Let me open it again. Okay, so I can do shift alt arrow down, then this should be add to cart. So each time I click this add to cart, what do I want to use? So if you want to change the state of an atom, you use Recoil state. So it's just like the use state. So I'll use let cat set cat, then use Recoil. So choose use Recoil state. Then now what you put as initial value must be an atom. You can't just put 2 here or 0 here. They have to just run at you, and that will show an error. So I'll put cat. Remember, that's what I exported from my atom. So the IntelliSense will soon show me that it knows about that, unless I've not saved that. so I shouldn't be using cat here. So what I need to do to differentiate that, I'll go to my atom and put this as cat cat atom, and save this as cat atom, so that I can use cat the way I want to use it in my home. So if I do that, just put cat atom. So notice it's showing me cat atoms from your atom. So if I do that, it automatically imports that. So that means I can come here and put my cat. So what I can do here is to do another pipe symbol, then cat should be of cat. So this will just be showing cat inside what an array object, then inside this bracket format. So what I will need to do is this, instead of this set name, I'm going to put set cat, then I'm going to use that previous method. So the previous method prev plus 1. So that means it will change cat from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, just like that. So let's now see how this works. So if I go back to my browser, I go to my home. So notice I have cat inside this. So notice if I say add to cat 1, so notice it has changed. So you might say, okay, this is just the same thing that we are doing with our use state. So let us do the same thing here. So let's go back to our navbar. So what I want to do is to add another component here, another link here, and for now this link goes nowhere, so I just put my hash. Then what I will need to do here is to put my cat, then cat. But if we do this will throw an error because cat is not defined anywhere here. So what I'm going to do now is to use require value. Now in this navbar, I don't want to change the state, I want to just use the require value. So instead of me to use a sledgehammer to just kill an ant, I will just use maybe my foot to just kill the ant. So that's what it means. So you can use require state here, it will still work, but only that there will be no need for you to use the set cat or whatever variable you want to use here. So what we'll do here is let cat be equal to use require value. So not state now. So just want to read from the updated. So since you want to read from the cat, so use the cat atom still here. So cat atom. So that is for that. So if I save this now, this will work. So notice what will happen if I go to my browser. So I'll see cat of 1 and 1 here. So notice now if I add to cat 2, notice it adds here and it adds here. So that means there is no prop. I'm not passing this as a prop, using global stating. So this is how we use the atom in our require. This is how we use the atom in our require. So the next one is the selector, which I would like to teach, but I'll show you how to use that in some subsequent videos, so that this basic one will stick. But one last thing I want to show you, let's see if we are done with this slide, is to use the custom hook. So atom and select, So it's also related to the way we use this our select is also related to the atom. So they can almost do the same thing. So let's learn how to use the custom hook first, then if need be I'll show you how to use the select. So the custom hook, so we've known how to use the hooks that CareerEX gives to us. So what if we want to create our own? So like we have what the add to cart, we have the count, that is the C and add C. Let's say I want to use that logic in another page. Do I have to? So one way I can do that is to come to my component here and copy this, my home page, and copy this logic that is here. So I want to add to cart, I will do this. I want to increment to cart, C, I will do this. Then still the import state and other stuff. So how do I extract this logic away using my custom hooks? So what I'll just do is to create a folder which I will call hooks. Then inside here, so the name of this our hook, so let's call it count, because that's actually what it's doing. So I'll call it count. But there is a condition for naming the, say is what use, say a custom hook is like a component but must have use before the component name. Example, use fetch, use addition. So I'm going to save it as what, use count or use C, anyone. So let's use count, makes sense, use count dot JSX. So I'm going to save this as ROAFCE. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove this here, and so if I don't want to export it as default, so I can just export. So this does not work, so I will remove this, put it here, so export this, so that works. So this is not a component, so it will not return a div, so it will return an object if you want. So this will return an object. So what do I want to extract? I want to extract this C, so I'll extract this. So let's see, I'll do Control C. So as I extract, I'll comment so that you can refer to it later on, but only to just make the code messy. So I'm going to use my use state, so I have to import that. Then so excuse me, then I'm also going to extract so that means I'm going to this our previous count, will not use it much, so we'll just leave it at that. So we are going to comment it out in so excuse me, so I'll do Ctrl C, then I'll comment this out, then I'll paste here. So what I'm going to do is to remove this my previous count. So anything that has to do with my previous count, because I don't want it in this page. So remove all of this. Okay, so that is that. So what I want to do now is to accept a variable here, which is I'll call that I'll just call that count. So the initial count is what will be here, so that is count. So apart from that, we have nothing. So if I want to use this set count, I will pass in an initial value which will be saved here. So what I want to return now is I'm going to return count. So let me put that. So because we don't want to change anything in this code, so I just want it to be the way it is, so I'll leave it at C instead of count. So I just return C as C. Then I will return increase C, and I also return decrease C. Now I'm using two methods. So if the name here matches this, so instead of you to put this column, you can just put it like this, so either of them will work. So that's why I use that. So I'm returning up all of this. So now this have extracted this. Now if I save this, now you notice I'll have some errors because notice C is not defined, right? So if I want to use this now the way I've been using it here without error, so what I have to do is to destructure. So I'll come back here, I'll say let, so I'm using a bracket, I will say C, then decrease C, increase C, from, just use count, you see it's coming from my hooks. Then I'll pass an initial value of what? 0. So if I pass 10 there, the initial value will be what? 10. Now just by adding this, see everything will work the way it should work as normal. So if I save this now, the error will be gone. So you notice the error will be gone. So if I press plus, you notice it adds here. I press minus, notice it adds. There's no longer an error. So if I refresh excuse me, so if I refresh now, so I can have plus, minus, plus, minus. So you see that what I've just done now is to extract all of this logic. So if I remove this now, you notice it will be a clean code I have here, just a clean code. So you see, now the beauty of this now is if I want to use this in another page, the same count logic, what I will just do is to just call it in that page. So let me use the same count logic in my books. So I'll go to my books. Where's my books? So let's go to my books. So what I'll just do here, let's say I want this count to start from 10. I'll say let, so because I use brackets to return from my use count, I'll use bracket to the structure. If I use an array, I'll use if I use a square bracket, use a square bracket. Now the difference between returning with a square bracket and an array is that if you use a square bracket, the order of return must be kept so that you have the expected value. But if you use this, if you use this curly bracket, the order of return does not matter. So that's why I'm using it. So you see here, decrease C, then increase then I'll have this as use count. So then I'll have 10. So notice what will happen now. So to use this here, Alt Z to break. So what I'll just do is we'll have a H3, just put my C column C. Then if I want to increase C now, I'll just put my button C++. To decrease is C minus minus. So what I'll just do here is on click, so I'll call my anonymous function. So now I want it to be specific, so yeah, I'll just so if you use your anonymous function, you have to invoke it, but if you don't use that, you should not. So since I'm not passing a value, so let me just put my increase C, then here should be decrease C, decrease C. So that's a double C. So that is it. So decrease, I'm not sure that's what I returned. Okay, decrease C. Okay, so that is it. So let me save. So if I go to my output, I have my C. So if I press plus, notice it's from 10 to 11 decrease. So my decrease is not well spelled, so I think that is why decrease. So there is no arrow here, there is no arrow here. So notice the color has changed. So I was wondering why the color did not change, but I couldn't spot the error. So if I decrement like this, I see 9, 10. So you see, because I use a use fetch now, you see how easy you see how easy it is to add the logic now. So what a custom hook does is you can use it to extract the logic. So you see this logic now of the use state, add this, do this, has been extracted. So I'm just using it clean here. How many lines of code? Just 3 lines of code as against, let's say 17 lines of code, or if you remove that, let me like 10 lines of code. So which is again, and you see that it's easier for you to understand this code this way than when you do everything here. So that is what the custom hook does for you. So if you know that you're going to reuse a logic in more than one page, you use the custom hook. If you know that the logic for a state is too long and you can obscure the rest of your page, making it unnecessarily long, you can extract that into a custom hook, even though you will not use it in another page, but just to keep the actual component neat. So you can extract that. So those are the 2 reasons. Now the select does the same work as the use as the custom hook. It is used to derive a state from an atom. So that is just it. So that's why I'll just leave it, because this same function that I'm doing here, this same functionality that I'm doing here of using of maybe incrementing with that is to get an increment to get this sorry, excuse me. So if I increase a state, well, there's still some functionality that you can use the custom hook, but only that. I don't want the video to go so long. So it's already 1 hour 45 minutes. so maybe I can do that in subsequent video. So that is how we call it a day for this video. So remember what we've learned, so you just practice, and I'll see you in the next video.